Good morning. It is June 24th, 2022. I finally got there. This is the fourth time of asking. Online today, we got Dr. Dave Gardner and the inimitable Mr. Todd Hicks. We may have a couple of others turning up, but as the heat and humidity and stress levels have built, people are starting to get more and more requests in regards to taking a look at potential problems. First up this morning, Dr. Gardner.
Good morning, everybody. Unless, of course, you're watching this in the afternoon, then good afternoon. So I got a call this week, and the question was, why is there so much white clover compared to, previous years? And the one thing that I would point out is that this period of the year seems to be kind of the peak time that you see white clover and black medic and bird's foot trefoil in bloom. And so these are just naturally more visible in lawns at this time of year, sort of like how dandelion is more visible when it's at its peak bloom during April. But there does seem to be more coverage of white clover. And I guess I'm going to attribute it to this, and this is maybe a little bit more unscientific than I should be on a recording like this. But if you look at the ecology of clover, it tends to be favored by a couple of things. One is when you have too much moisture. Two is when you have too little moisture. So there's kind of like a sweet spot where the grass is more competitive with the clover. And then one of the other factors is relatively lower fertility. So what I'm going to speculate is that at the beginning of this year, we had a lot of rain, which not only did that favor the clover, but depending on the source of the nitrogen that you were using as a fertilizer, that might not have persisted for as long as we would have liked. And so then you would have a situation where you'd have, less fertilizer for the turf, which would give a competitive advantage to the clover. In addition to that, we went from, it being really, really wet to now it's really, really dry. So if you look at, one of those graphs on the National Weather Service's climate site, you can see that according to them, we've had all of the rain in Columbus that we should have until the third week of July, but we haven't had any recently. And so we went from, it was way above normal moisture wise to now it's getting pretty dry, which again, also favors the clover. So you factor in that the conditions have accidentally been pretty ideal to favor this plant over the grass, with the fact that we're at that period of the year that it's in, kind of peak bloom, not only white clover, but also black medic and bird's foot trefoil. And you see that, we have a unique situation. When it comes to controlling any of these, the herbicides of choice would be fluroxapyr for non-golf course uses or clopyralid for golf course uses. Of course, MCPP is also an option. That tends to be a little bit less effective, but it is still something that you can consider. Okay. But when it comes to the application, we're starting to get into that time of the year also where it's kind of tricky to use, those herbicides. Now, in addition to these clover species, I would point out that we're also starting to see some of the summer annuals emerging and gaining in cover. So things like prostrate spurge and purslane. I would say that based on the trials that I've done, it's better to try to hit these summer annuals early before they've hardened off due to heat and drought stress, kind of like what we're starting to encounter. I absolutely have tried to do trials on these two weeds, prostrate spurge and purslane, during the month of August. And pretty much regardless of the product that I used, after I set the trial out and I went to do the ratings, the first thing that came into my head was, I remembered to mix the stuff that I was supposed to apply with the water before I sprayed, right? I like there wasn't any injury. So, like these weeds after they harden off due to heat and drought stress can be really tough to control. So again, if you see them now is a good time to try to make those applications. The tricky thing, of course, is that, our herbicides can be kind of tough to use when it's warm out, right? So generally speaking, we want to use amines when the temperature is above 70 degrees, and we want to avoid spraying when temperature is above 80. There are some products that can be used in higher temperatures with caution, but it's still better to spray during the cooler times of the day if possible. There are some ester formulations that are advertised as effective up to 90 degrees. And generally what that is a low volatility ester. Not all esters are the same. There's long chain esters and short chain esters, and the long chain esters are less volatile. It's generally one of those long chain esters combined with 2 or 3 amine-based active ingredients in a product that's designed to be used in warmer weather. But again, when you apply when it's too warm, you can have things like drift injury, but which will, cause some problems with nearby ornamentals. But in addition to that, you can have premature volatilization, evaporation, or drying on the leaf, which will result in not the control that you were hoping to get. So again, at this time of the year, on days where, the temperatures are forecast to be in the 90s, I personally prefer to make those applications in the morning, if at all possible. It's not just for the safety of the ornamentals, but the products, tend to be more effective because you've got more time for the product to get into the weed rather than, drying out too soon after application. Ed, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. Mr. Hicks, with all the disease and pestilence you can bring.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, whichever time you're watching this. Disease update for today. Well, dollar spot is really not an issue, which is kind of fascinating for the state of Ohio. It's usually eating people up by this time of year, but because of the high temperatures, it seems to be not an issue. It's showing up a little bit, mostly in golf course settings, but it is not an issue. No one's caring about it. No one's worrying about it this year so far. The big deal right now is what I warned of 2 weeks ago, anthracnose, especially for Central Ohio anyways. 90% of the samples I'm either getting text about, emails, or actually are showing up in the clinic are anthracnose, 100%, way blown out stuff. So word of caution, if you've experienced this before or are worried about it, check your spray schedule, check your chemicals, make sure you're covered. If you are dealing with anthracnose, summer's going to be a long one for you, especially if we stay in this weather pattern, because it's going to be hard to recover from that. 2 tips, and I tip my hat to Joe Rimmelsbach, my partner for 20 some years doing this back in the day. His first 2 things to tell folks that we're experiencing anthracnose were: number 1, make sure you're on a phosphite program. Phosphites are fairly cheap. They do a lot for turf health and enhanced fungicide applications. So we want to make sure we're on a 14-day rotation of phosphites. And number 2, if you can open up the soil, punch some holes. Doesn't have to be cores, solid tines, whatever you can do to loosen the compaction, get some air down to the roots, improve turf health. That's going to help you recover and help you get out of this fight. The other 2 things I'm worried about in the future, number 1, brown patch. We're super dry right now. We have the heat, and that's what's been holding back brown patch. There's been a few reports, mostly in home lawn settings, high cut stuff. But if we get into a rain event, looking at our 10-day for Central Ohio, they're talking about 2 or 3 days, maybe, of rain during the 4th of July weekend. If that hits, brown patch will flare up, sure as betting. So kind of be on the lookout for that one if and when we get some wet weather. And the other one is summer patch. Usually late July, August weather pattern is when we start seeing that, start diagnosing it. But we are in late July, August weather pattern. So that could show up much earlier than normal. So be on the lookout for that one. But other than that, that's all the disease stuff that I'm seeing right now.
Thanks, Todd. Just a couple of things to wrap up on with the fact we have dried out, I think, in most of the places. Irrigation practices and timing for the high cut turf probably going to be most appropriate to be deep and infrequent if possible. Do be aware that if you're on the homeowner end of it, irrigating when the humidity is through the roof is probably not the greatest idea. Sometimes it's better to do less in that situation. And so if you can reduce irrigation at those times, that's fine. And while the homeowners that watch this may be like, well, we can't that's sometimes why you pay people to do that. Other things from the standpoint of upcoming activities, remember we got the OTF Field Day and OLCA Field Day coming up in Columbus. And also got our scholarship golf outings with the OTF one on October 3rd, I believe, and the ATI scholarship outing now announced for October 19th up in Worcester at the Country Club. If there are any questions or anything to inquire about, don't be afraid to reach out to us. And with that, we hope, based on the forecast, we all get through a nicer week. It looks like it's going to come down early and then heat up next weekend, but it will be dry. So irrigation is probably going to be needed in many spots in that situation. Thank you. We'll talk to you all next week.